Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League and all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Make sure if you're watching on the YouTube to subscribe to the YouTube. Getting some really good response on the YouTube at the moment. I want to keep that going. So make sure, become the Big LEZ'S League community. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow the Instagram, Big LEZ'S League _. Really trying to rebuild the Instagram as well after being hacked a few months back, having to start again. We are really trying hard to rebuild that community as well on there. So make sure, if you haven't already, to follow the Instagram. Some great content coming out on there. Also on the TikTok as well, exclusive content that you won't get anywhere else. Make sure TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, subscribe to all of those. Also, we are on all podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to get into that as well. But let's get into our Blues Smokeys. We're going to do an episode today for the Blues and then tomorrow for the Maroons. We'll start off with the Blues, though. Plenty of Smokeys to talk about here. In fact, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Smokeys to touch on. Obviously, if you would have seen the post today, you'd already know the first one we are going to talk about. And talk about Smokeys, it's one that I think you guys probably wouldn't have guessed me to mention. Sifa Talakai. I think that he is a Smoky. I think obviously being in the squad before, having that experience helps for sure. While it is limited experience, he has been in the squad. He has been a part of the squad before and has played a few games of Origin now. I think 2 or 3 games. But not only that, the Sifa Talakai that we saw in those Origin games is completely different to what we saw this season, or what we have seen so far this season from Sifa Talakai, whether it be coming off the bench, starting in the back row. He's been outstanding, and I think the game is also moving towards those small, more mobile forwards, which it's just his game. Obviously being a centre for most of his career, now moving into that forward sort of role. He's absolutely killing it, and I think off the bench would do a pretty decent job. And I think that if he does have a decent game this weekend, it'll definitely get Madge thinking on how he is going to structure this side going into game 2. And I mean, you look at the game in game 1, those small, more mobile forwards in Cam McInnes, Hudson Young, coming off the bench, they just didn't have enough sting. They didn't get enough go forward when they ran the football. I think that's Sifa Talakai. If you watch some of his runs this season, he gets plenty of go forward for his team, whether it be, as I said, off the bench in the middle or on an edge. He gets a ton of go forward for his side. So Sifa Talakai for me is definitely one to look out for. Another Smoky I want to bring up here, and look, for some people, isn't a Smoky. For some people, he's already in the Blues side. If he does make a successful return from his hamstring injury. Bradman Best, I think that, obviously killed it last year coming into that Blues side. Definitely would be in Madge's consideration coming into this year if, as I said, he does make a successful return from that hamstring injury. Bradman Best, very excited to see what he can do in this side as well. If he does come in where he sits in this side, if he is at that left centre spot where he does play at Clubland, I think that that's realistically where he would end up, obviously on that left side with Brian To'o, and then your right side would be Stephen Crichton and Zach Lomax. So Bradman Best definitely under consideration for that left-hand side. Obviously other guys in that consideration, or guys that I'd have slightly in front of him until I see him return, are Matt Burton, Latrell Mitchell, who I think are going to be in the 17, or at least I think are pretty much guaranteed at getting those spots. But wouldn't rule out Bradman Best. I think it is a bit of a smoky to get back into the team and back into that left centre spot, as especially after what he did last year, as we said before. Now, one definitely to watch coming back from injury as well this weekend is Cam Murray. Obviously, coming back from a pretty severe hip flexor injury. Some would say coming back a little bit early, as I said in the Rabbitohs radio podcast. I probably wouldn't be bringing him back this early from this type of injury, especially against a Brisbane pack like Paddy Carrigan, Payne Haas, Corey Jensen, Jordan Ricky, Brendan Piakura. Most of these guys, Origin representatives. Corey Jensen looking to potentially make his Origin debut, depending on his performance against South Sydney on the weekend. But yeah, look, I mean, Cam Murray, it is a tough test to bring him back in. depending on where he plays, whether he goes out onto the edge or whether he goes into the middle for Keon Kalamatangi, I'm not too sure. I don't think he starts. I think he does come off the bench. Where he does come onto the bench, how long he does play, I'm not too sure. I think that Madge will definitely be in discussions and just trying to see how many minutes he will get and just getting a real taste of where Cam Murray is at. Watching Cam Murray train, obviously talking to Chaps, who's on the Rabbitohs radio podcast with myself. He went to go watch Cam Murray train in his first session back, doing a bit of contact, yesterday and the day before. And Chap said that it's the best that he's ever looked in terms of fitness, getting off the ground really fast. If you didn't know he had a hip flexor injury and you went to go watch him train, you'd think that he'd been playing all season. So great signs for Cam Murray coming back, looking really fit, ready to go. Very, very exciting stuff for South Sydney. But as I said, though, it is gonna be a real test for him going up against this Brisbane pack, because no matter if he is in the middle or on the edge, he is going to be under a bit of strife. If he goes onto the left edge for the Rabbitohs, he is going to be going up against Jordan Ricky. Right edge, he's going to be going up against Brendan Piakura. In the middle, you're going up against Payne Haas, Paddy Carrigan, Corey Jensen. I'd probably rather him go onto the right edge if I had to pick anywhere for him to come into the game. But as I said, look, we'll have to wait and see what his role is in this side. Does Tallis Duncan being on the bench change his role a bit? Look, we've talked about that in the Rabbitohs radio podcast. So if you want to go and listen to that, I'll leave the link in the description. But Cam Murray, very interesting to see where he does come on, how many minutes he does get. And, if he will be under consideration for Madge. I'm hearing that Madge will be watching him this weekend and keeping a very close eye on his fitness. I think he's a guy that could come in and replace Cam McInnes. I think that change, if Cam Murray is 100%, will happen. Now, in terms of the number 14 jersey, depending on how you're structuring your team, if Matt Burton does go into the starting side at left centre, Connor Watson comes into the frame here in that 14 jersey. I think Connor Watson is in the frame anyway, and I think could even push Matt Burton into an 18 jersey. Just with the out-and-out 14 value, we can come in and play a bit of dummy half in the halves, fullback, centre, lock forward. He can play a number of roles for your side. Connor Watson, pretty much from 1 all the way down to 13. I think having that utility value, a little bit more utility value than what Matt Burton has. But Connor Watson, depending on how he plays this weekend against the Roosters, I think could be a real smoky for New South Wales off the bench. Look, even before game 1, we had him as our guaranteed number 14 before the injury. I think that Connor Watson is definitely in the frame here. I think that Madge will definitely be keeping a close eye on Connor Watson, how long he plays in this game, coming back from a pretty decent throat injury. He's had a few of these now, Connor Watson too. I think he had one at the start of his Roosters career as well. Looking for him to have a big impact coming back into this Roosters side. We saw the form before the injury. Looking for him to continue that form and hopefully earn himself a New South Wales Blues jersey, because he's very close. And I think, as I said, could potentially, if Latrell Mitchell is your starting centre, push Matt Burton into an 18 jersey just with the utility value there of Connor Watson. Who have we not spoken about yet? Tony Staggs, obviously playing this weekend. Look, it's going to be a bit of an interesting one. I think he is well behind guys like Bradman Best, Latrell Mitchell, Matt Burton, but definitely one to consider, and especially if he has a big game against the Rabbitohs, scores a few tries, looks good in contact, stuff like that. I think that he'll definitely be considered. His past Origin performances probably haven't been the best, but definitely I wouldn't, rule him out of contention at all, even if it is just in the squad. I think that he will definitely be under the glass eye of Madge Maguire. Jesse Ramian, same deal. I think he is well behind some of these other guys, Latrell, Matt Burton, Bradman Best. But as I said, definitely not someone to count out. And if you do want to leave Critter on the left-hand side with Brian To'o, and you want another good defensive centre, even though that Jesse Ramian's defence has been a little bit questionable, you could chuck Jesse Ramian there with Zach Lomax. It is still a little bit dangerous for me. It isn't something that I'd be going for, but definitely something to consider, and I think that's something Madge will be considering as well. Abby Coruscant for me for the squad, whether that be 18 or 14. We had him as our number 18 in our previous squad that we named after round 14. I think that he will be the 18th man as well, depending on how he does play this weekend for the Tigers. Obviously, Tigers coming off 9 straight losses now, but Abby Coruscant has still looked good in most of those. Looking for how his form is going. We couldn't see him miss out generally because the Tigers are struggling too. Something that Madge will be definitely looking out for. Isaiah Katoa not into the starting side or into the starting 17. Isaiah Katoa more so in the sense of will he earn himself a spot in the squad to be blooded into that squad, because I think he will be a New South Wales player of the future for sure. Isaiah Katoa, he's an absolute freak. His kicking game is outstanding, and just his game management as well, and his maturity with how he plays for such a young guy, a 20-year-old guy. I think that it's just something to applaud. He's an absolute weapon, in and around the Dally M rankings as well, in the top 5 just recently. I know we bring this up a lot on the podcast, but that is just absolutely phenomenal. I think that Isaiah Katoa is definitely in under consideration, struggling to speak English today, by Madge Maguire for sure. I think that he will definitely be in and around the conversations for the squad, whether that be 18th, 19th, or 20th man. If he makes the 17, it wouldn't be the biggest call in the world. I mean, you look at some of the halfbacks available with the injuries. Himself and Mitchell Moses are the only right dominant halfbacks, I should say, in contention at the moment. Luke Keary was in the reserves before. I think Luke Keary drops out and Isaiah Katoa comes in because, as I said, he is a right dominant half, and Luke Keary more so a left dominant half, really good going down the left-hand side. I probably wouldn't bring Luke Keary in again. I think that Isaiah Katoa comes in. And look, Luke Keary generally, not the best pick either by Madge. Luke Keary is retiring, and when you want to go and look for players of the future, I think Isaiah Katoa's got to come into the squad in game 2 and 3. Look, one that not too many people are talking about at the moment, but obviously was definitely under the microscope for game 1 selection. Terrell May, I think that he's still a chance. If he has a big game for the Roosters on the weekend, I think that he will definitely find his way onto the bench, or at least in the conversation for the bench, or maybe even just in the squad if Mitch Barnett gets upgraded into that starting 17. Terrell May, for me, will definitely work his way into the squad if he does have a big performance here. It just depends on what Madge is thinking, what rotation he wants to go for. If he wants guys like Terrell May, or if he wants guys like CSF Talakai, the smaller, more mobile guys in which the game is moving towards. And then a guy in the number 6 jersey that I think will definitely be under consideration. A lot of people are talking about the fact that Luai might miss out. I doubt it. Luai was one of the better players for the Blues, and if you go back and watch that game, you'll understand what I mean, particularly when the Blues were struggling to find structure and not making the best decisions on last tackle plays through Nico Hines. Luai pulled them out of that slump, and Luai made some massive plays to pull that side back into the game as well and keep them in the fight in the second half. It was a lot off the back of Luai. But Cody Walker, I think, is definitely going to be under consideration here. He is going to be in that discussion for the next 2 to 3 years for me, or at least 2 years, right up until he retires. What he did in game 3 last year, obviously what he's done in the past coming into this team as well. I think that Cody Walker is definitely going to be in the discussions as a Smoky. There you go. Those are my Blues Smokies going into game 2. If there's anyone that I've forgotten, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. But my Smokies at the moment going into game number 2 for State of Origin 2024 are Cam Murray, Bradman Best, Connor Watson, CSC for Talakai, Tony Staggs, Jesse Raymond, Abby Coruscant, Isaiah Katoa, Terrell May, and Cody Walker. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is there anyone I've missed out on? Make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube. Follow the Instagram, Big LEZ'S League _. The link to the Instagram is going to be in the description. Make sure to subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one.